Welcome back to another edition of Songs of the Ozarks, a project of the Ozark Studies Institute, an ongoing initiative of the Missouri State University Libraries. My name is Emalee Flatness-Combs, and today's date is February 7th, 2024. Today, we are at the home of Larry and Judy Sifford in Branson West, Missouri, or would you say Reed Spring?
It's both. It's actually got the same zip code.
Okay.
So Branson West, Reed Springs, either one's fine.
Perfect.
That works.
And our special guest today is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Larry Sifford.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm enjoying it. I've looked forward to it since you told me you wanted to do this, and we could talk about the music, and I love talking about music.
Me too. So my first question is, where were you born? Did you grow up here in the Ozarks?
I was born in West Plains, Missouri in 1947, so that'll give you an idea how old I am. And we lived there for a while, and then we actually moved down to southern Missouri, southeastern Missouri.
Okay.
And that's where my father's side of the family was from. And then my mother's side of the family was from here in the Ozarks and West Plains area. And so we kind of moved back and forth as time went on through the years. Now, as I became a young boy, and right when I went into my early teen years, we were living at Gainesville, Missouri, over in Ozark County.
Great.
And loved that part of the country. Growing up in Gainesville, Missouri, in the late 50s and early 60s was like growing up in Mayberry. It was just a wonderful, wonderful little town to live in, and people were friendly. And the Sheriff Rose at that time, he never wore a gun. He was just really a down-to-earth type of a guy. And so, but music, involved with music, was more on my mother's side of the family than on my dad's side. My mother actually sang with her two sisters in a trio. And they sang on the radio station in West Plains, Missouri, along with Porter Wagner.
Wow.
And Porter was singing there, just getting his start. And I have to laugh a little bit because my mother and them were singing the old Andrews Sisters type music, kind of that type of thing. And Porter was doing country. And they kind of, at that time, kind of snickered at the fact that he was a little bit too rural. They were like the Andrews Sisters and the big band era, the jitterbug and all that stuff that was going on. Later on in life, my mother admitted, she says, Porter had it right. And so, long story short, he made the money and they didn't. Anyway, that's how I kind of got introduced to music, was through my mother's side of the family.
Oh, lovely.
They played the instruments.
Okay.
My grandmother played piano. My uncle played mandolin and guitar. My other uncle played the fiddle. And so I heard that music over in Howell County, over on Lake North Fork. I heard that music as a young child growing up. And it kind of inspired me to go. I always loved bluegrass. And when I heard Earl Scruggs on the 5-string banjo, it was like, wow. I've never heard anything so exciting in my life. So I began to kind of follow bluegrass a little bit, but then still in the teen years, I liked the 50s and the 60s rock and roll, Elvis, the Beatles, the Doors,
You got it.
that type of thing. I loved all that. Now in later years, though, I've drifted back to my roots.
Yes. Did you play that kind of music too?
I actually played tenor banjo, and I played a little bit of mandolin, and I played a little bit of guitar. I actually played tenor banjo, which is a plectrum style banjo.
Yes.
Played in music groups up in the St. Louis area after my wife and I were married, and after I got out of the Navy, I began playing with some groups, and we'd play all different types of music and everything. One of the fun experiences I had was actually playing on the Becky Thatcher, which was a paddle wheeler on the Mississippi River one night. I got to play tenor banjo on that gig, and that was a fun thing. Kind of took me back to the Mark Twain days.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Did you ever play rock and roll? I'm still.
I played a little bit of. I did. I didn't play rock and roll as per se, but we drifted on the edges of some of that era of the music. Trying to think of some of the groups that inspired us. The Beatles were a big influence in a lot of ways. In fact, as you know, the Dillards recorded one of the Beatles songs called "I've Just Seen a Face."
Really?
Yeah, and later on in years when we were playing bluegrass, we adopted that when Dean was in our band. We played that song. Yeah. But rock and roll, gospel music was another big influence on me. My father was a pastor, and my mother was a devout Christian woman, and they taught us children to sing gospel music as a kid growing up. And they also taught us how to sing harmony. And you have to hear it. As you well know, it's not something you can say, okay, look, I'm just going to harmonize. You have to be able to hear those four parts in your head. And so Mother would say, Larry, you take tenor, because I was a young boy and I had a higher voice. And my sister sang alto, and Mother would sing kind of a second alto, and my dad would sing the lead. Or Mom would sing the lead, Dad would sing bass, my sister would sing alto, and I'd sing tenor. So we learned from little kids on up how to harmonize with each other. Fun stuff.
So you just had one sister?
I have one sister who lives in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Really?
She's a professional artist and has
Oh,
actually had her artwork displayed in the Raleigh Museum of Artwork there in North Carolina. She's done a lot of work in batiks. I've got a younger brother who actually is a musician and was in music all of his life. He began in the early years playing guitar and singing, and some of his he started out over in Texas County. And playing with a couple of boys over there, and had a group they'd go play, and the Gatlin brothers was his big influence. He loved the Gatlins. And adopted and covered a lot of their music and that. And actually today is extremely good friends with Larry, Steve, and Rudy. They live in the same area, and they get together at my brother's house.
Wow.
And they get together and have jam sessions. So my brother performed here in Branson for about 5, 6, 7 years for the Roy Clark Show. And sang music and played guitar. Then he left here and went to the Carolina Opry in Myrtle Beach, and he was there 25 years and retired from there as MC, lead singer.
Gotcha.
That's what he did.
Didn't the Gatlin brothers sing All
the Gold in California? They did. That was the Gatlins.
I love that song. That's dandy.
We, back before I moved back down here, one of the groups I was in up in the St. Louis area started doing Gatlin music. And we actually used to sing that song with a 3-part harmony. Yep, it was a great song.
It is a great song.
Yep.
So, you said you had uncles that played the fiddle and family members that played kind of old-time instruments. Did they play a lot of old-time bluegrass kind of music?
They did. Well, at that time, the term wasn't really bluegrass until actually Bill Monroe started making it more popular and that into the 50s and 60s and that. But yes, traditional, we would more call it like traditional roots music. Songs of the past. And so we would sing a lot of old Red Wing and just so many old songs that they would take, and old fiddle tunes and mandolin tunes, but a lot of old gospel songs were also. We'd stand around the piano and sing with my grandmother playing piano and my uncles playing guitar and mandolin or whatever they had, and we'd all stand around and sing as a family. My mother had 5 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
So there was a lot, and they were all excellent vocalists. They all could sing and harmonize. So it sounded a little bit like a choir at times. It was wonderful. I had a great childhood growing up amongst those memories. I really did.
Oh, I can imagine. Would you mind describing the difference between songs of the past, old-time music? I love that term, songs of the past, to describe that kind of music. And bluegrass. Would you describe the main differences for me?
I would maybe in the difference between those, if I can explain it, because there's really it's a gray area.
Yeah.
But plectrum style banjo, clawhammer style banjo, compared to the Earl Scruggs 5-string roll and rolling of it, changed from old style to the new style, more bluegrass style, and that happened in the 50s, and the fiddle tunes as well, violin, how you being a violinist understand that there's a lot of licks that you can put in the background and do fillers while you're playing. That wasn't done in old time music.
Yeah.
When you're playing bluegrass now, the fiddle player, a lot of times, if he's not taking the lead break, he's doing fillers in the background. You never heard that in old time music, in the songs of the past. They stayed right on, played their bit. You'd look at them, they'd take a break or whatever. Mandolin playing, a big style difference in mandolin playing from the old style pattern to what's going on today is they did more of harmony, twin string playing than they do nowadays on a mandolin, where they'll actually pick out the lead notes and take a break. Dean Webb, who performed with us back years ago, was an excellent and well-known bluegrass musician with the Dillards. Dean was the old style. When he'd take a break on a song, he was playing harmony beside it, not just one note lead.
Yes.
And now you hear in the later model versions of bluegrass music, you will hear more individual single note rather than harmony note. And so that's kind of some of the difference. Of course, guitars in the past were never, you heard very little flat picking until Chet Atkins came on board, and oh golly, so many other ones that were the greater players later on when they started playing lead. But most of the time, in the old time music of the past, it was more rhythm guitar playing and keeping the time. Because there wasn't a lot of bass fiddles, that's another thing. There wasn't a lot of bass fiddles played in song music of the past when groups of families would get together. You just didn't see circles with guitars, fiddles, mandolins. Very few basses. The bass fiddle didn't start coming on strong in that music until bluegrass. And Bill Monroe, and maybe the Sons of the Pioneers. The old Western style music was when you saw the bass. In fact, my bass fiddle that I play actually came from the Texas Rangers group out of Los Angeles, California. And that was Dean's uncle who played that bass, and then he basically gave me the bass later on in life. His son did. And but that was when the bass fiddle started to become more prominent in groups like that, and in big band. Naturally, they were very popular in big band.
Has the chopping on the mandolin, is that more prominent than it used to be in old time music?
I think so. Yeah, the offbeat chop was a bluegrass thing that started, I think, more so back in I don't remember my uncles who played mandolin, and hearing some of the other people that played mandolin. I don't remember them doing that offbeat chop. Which is nice. I like it. It's kind of a neat thing to have that offbeat, but and it. We used to kind of laugh every now and then. Dean was extremely good at it. He was a master at it, and he just looked back over his shoulder and grinned, sometimes because I'd be playing the beat on the bass and he'd be playing the offbeat, and so it was kind of fun to watch that. But I don't think that became prominent until later on into the bluegrass era.
How did folks back then learn new material?
Yeah, new material is difficult in some ways. If you're talking about as a band, you mean?
Yeah, as a band, or like, how would your uncle and family, your mother, how would they learn new songs?
New material kind of like when you were in church services, you'd hear a new song like, what's one of the most popular songs, How Great Thou Art? You never heard that in the old churches. That didn't really start out until later on, like in the 50s or 60s when it was brought in. Another good old gospel song that was brought, it was a song called So Send I You. And that was an interesting song that came out back in the 50s and 60s. And if I'm not mistaken, I think George Beverly Shea introduced that song at a Billy Graham concert.
Really?
I believe that's where that song was launched.
Okay. I don't believe I've ever heard it.
Yep, it's a neat song. So send I you to labor for my Savior. So send I you to labor for my name. Something like that's the way it goes.
That sounds like a song I would love.
You would. It's a great song.
And you grew up Baptist, correct?
I grew up, basically my mother's side of the family were Methodist.
Okay.
And my father's side were Baptist.
Okay.
And then when Judy and I were married, after I got out of the Navy, I will have to say, I didn't attend worship for quite a few years. Kind of gotten away from it. Had kind of felt like that at that time I just wasn't ready quite to settle down to being what I know that I probably should be. And long story short, we kind of searched for churches. And then when we moved back here to raise our children in the Ozarks, because I told her when our boys get to be able to school age, I want to raise them in the Ozarks, and where I grew up as a boy. And I wanted them to experience a lake. So when we came down here, we were looking for a church, and we found a little Baptist church over in Kimberling City.
Okay.
And we began attending there, and we stayed there for 31 years. But then I had a lot of friends that weren't attending worship anywhere, and I asked them why, and they said, well, there was just certain things that they didn't, they wanted something more simplistic or whatever it may be. So we started a program, a Sunday morning get-together called The Gathering, and we began that about 8 years ago, and we now, after 8 years, now we're located at the Sycamore Log Church, sits over in Roark Valley, behind Shepherd of the Hills. And it's a church that's approaching 100 years old, a log church, and we have now about 60 to 70, which started out with like 12. We're almost capacity out, but in the summertime, we meet outside. And we have people play, like little Emalee Flatness. She comes and plays music for us, and my son Justin plays music, and Jeff Michelle will come and play the fiddle, and we'll play the bass, and we do a lot of old gospel songs just like they did here in the hills years ago.
Little Emalee Flatness, she sounds lovely.
Well, she's probably one of the more popular ones that sings at the Sycamore Log Church.
Oh, she says thank you. So, I'll sneak back around pretty soon and ask you about the history of the church. But first, what brought you exactly to this area, to the Branson area?
Well, really, after I got out of the Navy, I wanted to bring my children back down here but we were married 9 years before we had children.
Wow.
And so when Justin, which is my older son, was 5, and then Ryan, my younger son, when he was 3, I told my wife, it's time. It's time to go back to the Ozarks. I don't want these boys growing up in the city over here. We lived actually in a little town called Columbia, Illinois, which is right across the Mississippi River from South St. Louis, a little German farming community. In fact, my wife, her family, and all of them are German.
Okay.
And in fact, my father-in-law, when he started school, he couldn't even speak English. He spoke all German.
Wow.
And so, long story short, we decided, though, that we wanted to raise our children here. So Judy and I, we made the transition back down here, and really the reason and the purpose behind it was I think this is more of a family-oriented area. It's extremely good for families. It's a lot of things you can do here with the family: go fishing, swimming, skiing, hunting, camping. There's just such a beautiful thing. The Ozark Mountains provide so many avenues for a family to be able to get out and do things that they enjoy. And we knew that. And so we decided to come back. That's what brought us back here.
Did you have much experience with like the Branson, Springfield area as a little guy?
No.
Did your family ever come down this way?
No, my first trip to Branson was in 1956. And my school teacher. We were in the 6th grade, and our school teacher had us all read the book, The Shepherd of the Hills. And we didn't have enough books, so we had to read them quick and then pass them to the next kid. So we all read them, and then she promised us that if we read it and she would bring us to Shepherd of the Hills on a field trip. So we got on a school bus in 1956 and rode all the way from Gainesville, Missouri, which is about an hour and a half drive or 2-hour drive from here, and maybe longer in a 56 school bus. But we drove over and pulled into Shepherd of the Hills, and we got to see old Matt's cabin, and then we went up to the old Shepherd's bookstore, which used to sit just around the curve from the Shepherd of the Hills, and it was so strange. It had a hangman's gallows out in front of it, and a rope hanging over the tree for the ball knobbers, And we were all in awe of it. And what was so cool about it, up on top of at the Shepherd of the Hills, where the ticket office is now, at one time had a flat roof and some stairs you could go up to and get on that flat roof. And it had a viewfinder up there, and if you put a nickel in it, you would get like 30 seconds of viewing. So when we got off of the school bus, the kids from over in Ozark County were fairly poor kids. There wasn't a lot of money in that part of the country, still isn't. Ozark County is probably one of our poorer counties, and so our teacher gave each one of her students a nickel so that we could look through the viewfinder. And for a kid in the 6th grade coming from over there to here was like, oh my gosh, look at this! You know, it was like through Branson, and then to get to look through the viewfinder, it was like, wow. And I'll never forget, there was a white horse on a hillside way over on one of the glades. And my teacher pointed it out. She said, now you kids look at it, you can see that white horse. So we turned it and looked. It was an awesome memory of mine. And that's my first experience with Branson, Missouri. Now later on, after we were married, we came here on our honeymoon, actually to Rockaway Beach, and spent our honeymoon a night or two there. Then we came over here on Table Rock Lake. That was in 1967, and stayed at the Alpine Lodges, which is just right behind our home over here on the lake. And never did we ever think that she and I would be living here on Table Rock Lake.
Right.
But we've been here now 41 years. 41 years. And been married 56.
Wow. I was going to say that's a long time, but that seems a little rude. That's just lovely. So, my other question, whenever you guys came on your field trip, do you remember if you went to Uncle Ike's post office? Was that a stop?
I don't think we did. I don't think at that time, by that time I think it was sitting vacant.
Oh,
in 1956 probably had been closed up and was no longer really a tourist attraction. The Morrill family that had that property and had that cabin on their property, I knew Lane Morrill personally, and he and I were friends. And his daughter, Lane's daughter, actually, my son Justin took her to the senior prom.
Oh my word!
It was kind of funny. She was a beautiful little girl, just a little petite thing, black hair, long black hair, just cute as a button. But she didn't have a date. And Justin didn't have a date. My son didn't have a date. And so they said, and they were good friends. They just weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, you know. And they said, you want to go together tonight? Yeah, let's do it. So they paired up and they went to the prom that night. And she was such a sweetheart. And anyway, Lane later on then got to be friends with us, and we also then began to getting him involved in the Hillcrofter organization. And that's actually how it began the restoration of the Uncle Ike's post office. Was Curtis Copeland, the president at that time of the Hillcrofters, and I got together with Lane and said, look, if we don't put a roof on this thing, it's going to collapse.
Yes.
And so he agreed, and of course he didn't want to put any money in it to speak of, and so we raised the money to put the roof on it and had it then. Well, then later on, it sat there for a while longer, and nothing more was done because the Hillcrofters were kind of, I guess, hamstrung to go any further with it because we weren't for sure if it would be available to be open to the public or not. Well, then,
Right.
unfortunately, Lane passed away, and then it went into their family. And Lane's son and daughter, the one that I was telling you about, they agreed then at that time to allow it to be moved to Shepherd of the Hills, and which was a good move. It was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to Uncle Ike's post office.
Yes.
It gets more visual contact, and they're extremely good about making sure that it's taken care of. And so the new folks at Shepherd of the Hills are doing a great job out there.
That's
Great
great.
job, you bet.
So Lane is Uncle Ike Levi Morrill's grandson, correct?
Great grandson.
Great grandson.
Great. Would it be great or great grandson? I
Okay.
think it could be. Yeah, 1890s. I would say great grandson.
Yeah. So circling back a little bit, I've been to a wonderful festival in Gainesville called Hootin' and Hollerin'.
Yep.
And that festival still does one of the best jobs in the Missouri Ozarks of keeping Ozarks traditions alive.
Very much so.
When did that festival start? Do you know?
Well, Hootin' and Hollerin' days actually started in the 60s.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a checker player, played checkers.
Okay.
And he was extremely good at it. He had books that had the numbering system on them, and he would study to play checkers. So every year on the county square there, Hootin' and Hollerin', they'd set up crafts festivals, and they'd have all sorts of food and different things like this, and they'd make sorghum. It was a lot like Silver Dollar City at the early days.
Yeah.
Or they did it there at Gainesville on the square. And they'd have checker championships. And so I remember my grandfather going there and winning the checker championship at the Hootin' and Hollerin' days.
My goodness.
Now, the more advanced stages of Hootin' and Hollerin' started years later, and I was already gone from there, so I don't know exactly when it was, but I will say this. We had the opportunity and the good fortune with our band, the Bluegrass band, the Missouri Boatride. We got to perform there twice and play for the square dance and play for the audience out there that night. But what was really strange about it, Emalee, was I got up and introduced the band to the folks at a certain point during the show, and I asked the audience, I said, how many of you folks lived here in 1956? And it was only like 3 hands went up. The rest of all the people that I knew had either died, passed away, or moved away. And so there wasn't very many people living there. There was only like 3 or 4 hands that went up. Now there were probably more that maybe didn't hear the question asked or something that could have been there. But it kind of shocked me, like, wow, we got all new people out here.
Yeah.
But I'll say one thing, the kids over there, they are still so much fun and love to square dance and get out there and kick up their heels. I love it. I love to watch them.
Last time I was there, they had a little, costume contest where it was like a pageant, but the little girls dressed in old-time dresses.
Really?
And I thought this is just such a fun way to start traditions.
I don't, of course, they may have had those when we played it, the 2 times we played it. We arrived there at the square about 6:30, 7 o'clock, because I think we went on at 8.
Okay.
And so
You got
I
the
probably
prime
missed
spot.
some of those festivities that were occurring during the day. I probably did.
So I was also wondering, did your family ever have like music parties, or do you remember attending music parties when you were little bitty?
Not honestly. The family was so big, that side of the family that played music was so big that they just mostly was family, because to feed all those people and take care of them was mostly just family. Because by the time my mother and them got to adult age, like I said, we probably had 20, 30 grandkids
Oh my goodness.
running around, because there was a family of 6. See, so they had a lot of kids running around. And so not so much there, but I will say this. Since that time, we have started having family reunions down in southeast Missouri
Okay.
with my family down from that part of the country. And we have an annual first weekend in October, get together around the campfire, and we play music at that every year.
Wow.
And sing and have fun. It's just a great, great time.
That's lovely.
Yep.
Just lovely. So we mentioned the Sycamore Log Church and the gathering that you began at Sycamore Log Church. Would you mind telling me some of the history of the church?
The history of the church.
Yes, please.
Well, the church started out as a brush arbor, and a brush arbor was what was used in this part of the country because there was, first of all, back in in the late 1800s and early 1900s, again, it was a very poor area, and so there wasn't a lot of money to build churches.
Yes.
You're fortunate if you had just a log cabin to live in yourself. And so what they would do is in the summertime, and they didn't have really churches to travel to because it would be an hour or two in a wagon and a team. And so they started brush arbors where a traveling preacher would come through, circuit riders they called them. And a circuit rider preacher would come through an area and they'd say, okay, we're going to be over there. And they'd send a mail, and through the mail they would make plans. Okay, this week you'll be here. Well, one week they were going to be over in Ozark Valley, and they built a brush arbor, which is post in the ground and like rafters of old cedars to hold the roof up. Then they pile brush on top of it and just have old logs or whatever to sit on inside. And the circuit rider preacher would come through and hold a revival, and the people would sit out there, and the ones that could play some music, either on a fiddle or a guitar, play some gospel music. And people were converted to Christianity. Those that were in the area would come, and so they began to seek out whether it was real or not real. And many of them found out that it was real and is real. And so that said, they began to, after the circuit rider preacher left, they kept meeting, which is a lot like in the New Testament. It talks about that the apostles would travel to the different communities, and they would gather together, and the apostles would teach and preach, but then they'd move to another city. Well, they didn't have any preacher left there, so they would sit and tell stories about Jesus, and that's exactly the way this worked here to a degree, although they did have Bibles here by that time.
Right.
So, and usually a circuit rider would leave a Bible with them or something. We had ways of doing that. And then it got fall of the year, autumn, and started getting cold. And so the congregation of the Sycamore Log Church at that time, or the Brush Arbor, they said, we don't want to stop this. We want to continue together as a family. So they went down into Ozark Valley and cut the sycamore trees and came up and built the little Sycamore Log Church right up above where the Brush Arbor is. At that time, it just had the corner rock foundation and a dirt floor, no floor in it, a shake roof, and that was it, and a wood stove. Now, it's improved somewhat since that time. We still are in the log building. We do have a floor in it now. We have, the first 2 or 3 years we were there, we still had the wood stove in it to keep warm in the winter, but we finally advanced up to a propane fireplace in the corner that helped heat the building and keep us warmer. But still no air conditioning at that time, although it was just recently put in air conditioning and a furnace for the Sycamore Log Church, although you won't see it because we've camouflaged it with wood so that the church still looks very traditional. Outdoor restrooms, but they're clean and they're fine. They're finished on the inside.
Yes, very nice.
So it's a lot like a Johnny on the spot or porta potties. And then we still baptize down in Ozark Creek. In fact, I had the privilege of baptizing your husband not too long ago, Jacob. And that was quite a joy. And also at the same time, Curtis Copeland was baptized, the president or the chairman now at the Hillcrofters.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's very exciting to be a part of this tradition.
Yes.
Something I just thought about. When did the Brush Arbor start, do you think?
Well, the church was built in 1933, so it's 90 years old.
Okay.
And I would venture to say then the Brush Arbor probably started that year, 32, probably 1932, and Willard Jones, who was a landowner nearby, who actually had donated the land for the Garber Schoolhouse, which sits up on top of the hill in the state park. Willard Jones also was very instrumental in helping to come up with the ways to build the Sycamore Log Church. In fact, helped participate in its building.
Okay.
His son is still one of the trustees. Bob Jones is still on the trustee board, along with myself and three other men. And it's a very historical location, and just a very wonderful place to go to a humble setting.
Yes.
And the church operates extremely unique, as you probably well know. It operates 100% debt-free and 100% no overhead, no administrative cost. So basically everybody serves out of love, nobody gets paid, and 100% of the tithes and offerings go back to helping the needy and the poor here in Stone and Taney County.
Yes.
It's a good place.
It
God's blessed us in a mighty way.
Yes. And there's a little memorial to Willard Jones, isn't there?
Pardon me?
Isn't there a little memorial to Willard
Yes,
Jones
there is.
outside of the church?
There's out in front of the church, there's a plaque out there that was put up by the Jones family recognizing Willard's participation and help in supplying the materials and different things needed to build the church. Very instrumental in the Sycamore building church. Usually it takes someone that leads the charge to do things, to get things rolling and get it moving. And Willard was that type of a man.
And now that's just like you.
Well,
in the gathering.
I've got some good help, and within the gathering, a lot of young people are coming, like your age. We're getting more and more, and like I said, it started out, and someday it's going to be left up to you all to carry on the tradition. And but I have some very strong people that have been with us from the very day one, who are deep believers and very thoughtful people, and just care about the continuation of that, making sure it stays.
Yes. And Guy Howard, the walking preacher of the Ozarks, didn't he make a visit to Sycamore Log
Yes, he
Church?
did. Guy Howard preached at Sycamore Log Church, I think, numerous times.
Wow.
In fact, it tells a story about him crossing Roark Creek with his shoes off and his socks off, and rolled his pants legs up to get across Roark Creek to come up and preach at the Sycamore Log Church.
Wow. Would you mind telling a little bit about Guy Howard?
Well, a little bit about what I know about him was this. He was a man that obviously was completely dedicated and committed to his life as a minister, and basically never charged for his teaching or his preaching, but basically probably was a lot like how the apostles of the past, of the original apostles, how they were taken care of. They would be given food, they would be given clothing, or they'd be given a little bit of money to buy clothing that would fit them. And I think that's how Guy Howard operated as well, as he walked and talked. And one thing about walking, you never have, if you know in advance that you're going to be walking, you leave early enough to get there. And you don't usually have a breakdown like you would years ago with the old cars or with the old tires, or having to have a team and a wagon or a horse to ride. I don't know why Guy didn't ride a horse, because most circuit riders did ride horses. But it may have just been something that he felt was necessary part of his commitment to serving as a pastor, and his suffering, knowing that sometimes you have to suffer to be one of God's men. And walking in the heat, in the cold, crossing creeks with your pants legs rolled up, I respect that a great deal, that the man was willing to take those types of sacrifices to share the gospel.
Yes.
Very good.
Well, we've talked a lot about Ozark's history, but now I'd like to talk a little more about your history specifically.
Okay.
Would you mind telling me how you first started playing music semi-professionally and professionally?
Yeah. Well, it started back probably in about 1968.
The year after you and Judy got married.
Yep, that was, I actually started playing music after I got married.
Okay.
I just, before then, I worked all the time and just really didn't have time to get involved in it. Then when I went into the Navy, I got out of the Navy, my wife and I were down in Blytheville, Arkansas, and my father was pastoring a church down there. And we were out riding around one day and looking the town over where they were at, and there was a little music store there, so we stopped, went in the music store, and I saw a ukulele banjo. And you've seen those before, I'm sure. Little
yes,
ukulele.
I believe I have.
Ukulele banjo, and I loved banjo music at that time. So I thought, I'm just going to pick that thing up and take it home and start messing with it a little bit. So I did, picked it up and started playing it and learned to play it. And then I went ahead and I thought, okay, I'm going to move on to a tenor banjo. So I went and bought a tenor banjo. And from then I went and bought a mandolin. Then I bought a better banjo. And then played in groups all around the South St. Louis area, over into Columbia. Played a lot of dances for weddings, parties, hay rides, and kind of just more of that type of playing. Just real relaxed and laid back type stuff. And some of it was country, mostly country at that time, more so than bluegrass.
Okay.
And so I moved here and basically put my instruments away.
Really?
Yep. I was starting a business, and so I began working hard again and just didn't have time. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I began building a small resort here on the lake, and bought land and built cabins and had that resort here. And so, but I always missed playing music. I missed it. So what happened is I had a tenor guitar, a Martin 1957 Martin tenor guitar, and I bought it from a lady that lived over next to us, and I was playing it, messing with it. Well, Justin was that time starting, 7, 8, 9 years old. By that time he was 10. I started showing him how to play the chords and the different things, and he started playing guitar. And then he decided he wanted to play the fiddle. So one time he told his grandma he wanted a fiddle, and his grandma bought him a fiddle.
Aww.
So Justin started taking lessons from Donnie Wright, and learned to play fiddle from Donnie Wright. And Justin still plays fiddle. He just doesn't let anybody know it.
Really?
But yeah, he and Dennis Pritchard, after when we started our bluegrass group,
yes,
he and Dennis used to play a couple of twin fiddle numbers together.
Really?
Yeah, you'll have to get on him about that.
I will.
Yeah. But so we began then having jam sessions as Justin got older and I got older, and before Justin was married, and that we started having a few jam sessions down at our house. And by that time, I was still playing the tenor guitar, wasn't playing the bass yet, and Justin was playing guitar, we had a banjo player, and we had a mandolin player, and we just get together and sing old songs and play a little bit of bluegrass. No bass player, no fiddle player.
Wow. And
so this mandolin player that we had playing with us, he wasn't consistent. He'd show up, here and now and then, and we'd be planning this jam session, and he wouldn't show up. So one night he didn't show up, and at that time I was doing a promotional program over at the Mel Tillis Theater, and Dean Webb was working for Mel Tillis at that time, and he'd play some when Pam Tillis would come to town. Dean would play some on some of her songs, and so I met Dean over there, and we were talking, just buddies, became friends. So, and Dean just lived a mile from where I live here now, just up the road here. So that night that mandolin player didn't show up, I told Justin, I said, I'm gonna call Dean and see if Dean would want to come down and jam with us. He said, Dad, Dean Webb's a professional, man. He played with the Dillards. He wouldn't want to play with us. And I said, you wouldn't know that unless you asked him.
Amen.
So I called him up. I said, we're gonna have a jam session down there a little bit, little sing, fun. I said, would you like to come? He said, I'd love to come. I said, what time? I told him. He said, I'll be there. So here he came. And that night, we picked and sang and everything. And what we discovered was this. Dean was a great harmony singer. And I like to sing harmony. Justin sang harmony.
Okay.
And so we developed that night, just in a very short period of time, we were singing three-part harmony together on certain old bluegrass songs.
Oh, lovely.
And Dean had not had that experience since he left the Dillards.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that bluegrass harmony.
It's like it revived his soul. He was, because he hadn't been playing, see, after he left the Dillards, and it was just kind of a downtime for him.
Yeah.
Well, he never left.
Wow.
So a year later, we were having a jam session. By that time, I started playing the bass, and Dean was playing mandolin, Justin guitar, Davey Nolan was on banjo, and we were playing one night in our living room, and a gentleman that was a Justin's friend told us, he said, "We're starting a new bluegrass and barbecue cruise here on Table Rock Lake. Would you guys like a job?" And we said, "Not really, but you know." But we said, "Well, tell us about it." They said, "Well, you play every night from 5 to 7, 5 nights a week, and here's what we'd pay you to do it." Well, it was good money.
Oh.
And so we decided, you know what, that might not be a bad little gig. Well, the first year, Justin was working at Silver Dollar City, so he couldn't play, so we did a threesome. Davey, Dean, and myself.
Okay.
So we had a banjo, a mandolin, and a bass. And we played that year all summer and all spring, summer, and fall.
Wow.
Up until Christmas. Well, the next year we told them over there that we and Justin had changed jobs by that time, and so he could play in the evenings. He could get off in time to come over and play.
Okay.
So we brought Justin into the group then with the guitar and that, and then we played another 2 years on that boat. We played 3 years nightly on Branson's American Star, it was called.
Okay.
Well, then we formed, and at that time is when we formed the name the Missouri Boatride. Now, a lot of people think that we formed the name because we were on the boat, but that's not true. That's not how we got the
Really?
name. The name Missouri Boatride came from the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales.
Really?
That's where the name came from. And it was where Clint Eastwood, Josie Wales, shot a rope into and sent the Federals down the river. When the ferry got broke loose, he shot a rope into on the ferry, and down the river they went. And there was a carpetbagger riding along with him in that movie, and the carpetbagger said, "You don't think you can shoot all those boys, do you, Josie Wales?" And he said, "No, Mr. Carpetbagger, we have something in this part of the country called a Missouri boat ride." And he shot the rope in two. That's what gave us our name. That's where we chose the name from.
Wow.
Because when we said, when we get out on the boat, we start playing music, you never know when anybody's going to shoot the rope in two.
Oh no.
So we played together for 18 years. We played Silver Dollar City, we played Bean Blossom, Indiana, we played Big Cedar, Dogwood Canyon, the shooting academies, we played festivals all around the country here. Just had a wonderful 18 years of experience with playing music together. One of the greatest tributes I ever saw about our mandolin player, Dean Webb, was this. We were playing Bean Blossom, Indiana, for the John Hartford Memorial Festival.
Oh,
and everybody knew who John Hartford was, and it's some of his crazy songs like Steam Powered Airplane and all those types of things that he did. So long story short, we were playing on stage, and I looked back behind us, standing in the green room door, looking out behind us with Herb Peterson and Chris Hillman. Now, Herb Peterson was with the Desert Rose Band,
okay.
and Chris Hillman was one of the lead beginning singers and forever member of the Byrds.
Okay.
You've heard of the Byrds?
Yes, I have
Okay.
heard of the Byrds.
Well, the Byrds were a very popular 1960s group. And so he watched us, and I looked back over my shoulder. I thought, oh my gosh, I've got excellent musicians standing around and listening to this old hillbilly play bass, you know. And but they were very kind and courteous. We finished our set, walked out into the audience, and sat down to watch them play. They came out on stage and they said, "How about another big round of applause for Dean Webb and the Missouri Boat Ride?" And then they said, "We're going to do a song for you right now, but before we do this song, I want to tell you something about this song." He said, Chris Hillman says, "When I was with the Byrds, we were at Capitol Records in Los Angeles one night getting ready to record this song, and we couldn't get the harmonies right. And he said, friends, you know that bluegrassers are excellent at harmony. They are excellent. And he said, at about that time, Dean Webb walked in to watch us record. So we asked Dean, how do you think the harmony should go on this song? And Dean says, well, let me listen to it. So he listened to it. He said, well, yeah, he said, I think you could do maybe the tenor line a little different and the baritone to give it a little bit more, just more of a different sound, but a really cool sound. And they said, well, Dean, why don't you sing those two parts with the lead and we'll record it and then we'll see if we can do it. So Dean did that. He did the second part and he did the third part. And then the Byrds listened to it and they recorded that song. And Chris Hillman said to the audience that night, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do that song for you right now. And it's called Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man.
Wow.
And if you've ever heard Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man.
I think I have.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. That's the way, and it's a cool song. And more than, probably a gold record for the Byrds.
Yeah.
And Dean Webb did the harmony arrangements on that song.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, quite a deal. Every time when I was on stage with him, we'd always do Old Home Place.
Yes.
Because he wrote that song.
Wow.
And along with Mitch Jane. They co-wrote it.
Wow.
Actually, Mitch did the lyrics and Dean did the music.
Okay.
And that's how that song was developed. But as you know, Old Home Place is a legacy. It was the Bluegrass Song of the Year 1960.
Wow.
Yep.
And it's still sung so many times.
Oh my gosh.
Every Bluegrass festival.
every band in the country plays Old Home Place, you know.
Which, you guys were my favorite band at Starvey Creek whenever I was little. Have I ever told you that?
Well, you know,
I loved Justin when I was little.
We did so many different things. You know, Missouri Boatride was not what you would call a real traditional bluegrass group, okay? We skated out on the edges. We did a lot of stuff, and that's because of Justin and Dean. Those two guys were into that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, then Danny Yancey played with us on banjo, and Danny is a machine gun on the banjo. I mean, he's just excellent at it. So what happened, we began doing songs like I've Just Seen a Face by the Beatles. Take It Easy by the Eagles.
Yes, I remember you guys doing that.
Remember that? And yep, and we would do. We even did Rocket Man by Elton John.
I think I remember that too.
That was a hot. We just burned it down, you know. but it was playing those songs at that days. I was so much more into bass playing at that time and was comfortable doing it. When you stop, and we've been gone now. We've been the band. We basically tied the boat up about 4 years ago, and since that time I do an occasional little jam session or something. But if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with my bass playing, and the fact that I'm getting older. I'll be 77 my next birthday, and my hearing is not as good as it used to be. And if you can't hear the leads sometimes, you know, you can keep the beat, but if you need to know where they're going in the song sometimes, or sometimes somebody will vamp on a song, and if you don't know that as a bass player, you're in trouble.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And so
you keep going.
Those types of things are things that it was time. There is a time. And that's another song we used to do.
To wonder.
And there is a time to know when to say when.
Yeah.
And it's fun to sit around and jam occasionally, but to do it professionally, nah. I couldn't charge anybody for what I do anymore.
That's not true. So there's been so many kiddos lately starting to play bluegrass and old time music here in Taney and Stone counties, and you've been very involved with helping these kiddos through the Hillcrofters and Ozark Mountain Music Association. My question is this sort of a new revival of these kids, or has that been going on in the Ozarks?
I think it's fairly new. I think it's been the last 10 years or 15 years. Wendy Wright is extremely involved in that, and Jeff Michelle are both two excellent people who are dedicated to introducing music and especially roots music or bluegrass or traditional music to our younger generations. They're dedicated to it with their hearts and their souls. And so the last 10 or 15 years, you've seen a recovery from it. Now, there was a fiddle group called the Possum Holler Fiddlers.
Yes.
And they were a great group of people teaching kids how to play fiddle. But they didn't teach them bass, they didn't teach them mandolin, they didn't teach them guitar or banjo. And so when Possum Holler Fiddlers disbanded, Wendy took the nucleus of that group, who were a bunch of little fiddle players, and brought them in and started bringing in the other kids that wanted to play guitar and mandolin and banjo and bass, and now has developed summer camps teaching these kids all these instruments. And it's an excellent, excellent program. Ozark Mountain Music Association. Now, Jeff Michelle also has continuously, for many, many years, held a Thursday night jam at the T Highway School over in Taney County. And that's where a lot of these kids learn a lot of this stuff, is getting out there and actually just sitting around listening to others play and trying to find it and hearing it and finding it. And so both of those people cannot be said about what they've done for bringing youth into the music and keeping it growing.
Yes.
That's for sure.
It's crazy to see, like, I went to the square dance this past summer.
Yes.
All these little bitty kids having just the best time square dancing. And teenagers.
They love, the teenagers are square dancing together and having in fact, I got a call from Wendy last night. My grandson, Jackson, you know Jackson.
Yes.
He's a guitar player and starting to play, and he's really, he plays a lot like his dad.
Okay.
He's learning a lot of that type of music, not really, quote, bluegrass as per se, but he loves some bluegrass stuff, and he likes bluegrass. And Wendy called last night asking me if I thought Jackson would be interested in getting involved with a bluegrass group that's starting a little band. So I don't know whether or not he will. I'm going to encourage him, because getting into bands really does push you onto your limits, and it helps you learn new material, and it lets you learn to feed off of another musician, and you're listening for when they're coming in and when they're going out, and you're staying in time with everybody. Playing by yourself, if you're not careful, you have a tendency sometimes to jump time. I've seen that. I've seen people do that a lot, and that's one thing about playing with a group. You learn to stay in time, you learn to listen, you learn to harmonize.
Yes.
And so there's some really benefits to playing in a group.
Yeah, there is. And it's
And
such
you play in a
good
lot of them.
teamwork.
Pardon?
It's so fun to experience teamwork
Yeah. You've.
in community.
I think music is probably one of the greater things to keep a person's soul intact.
Yes.
I can be out working, and I'll turn on my jam box to my Bluetooth, and I'll listen to Chris Stapleton. I'll listen to George Beverly Shea, who sings a lot of old gospel. I'll listen to Ricky Skaggs and Kentucky Thunder. I'll listen to Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin Brothers. I'll listen to some of my other Beach Boys for a while. And I just and it brings back so many memories of certain times in your life. So music is a soul toucher.
It is.
It is. It is.
And it speaks to everybody.
And tonight, you're going to be on our program,
I am.
Log Cabin Music of the Ozarks, live streaming, and we're going to have you sing and play, and I'm going to get to interview you.
Oh my goodness. We're just trading.
The timing is perfect.
It was perfect. Well, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Not right off the top of my head, is other than encouraging people, families,
Yes.
grandmothers, grandfathers, moms, and dads. If you ever get a chance to watch this program or listen to it, I would encourage you greatly to listen to your children and get them involved in music. Sports are wonderful. I love sports. I love baseball. I love to watch football, basketball. I'm 6'5". I used to love to play basketball.
Oh, yes.
But music you can do until you're 75, 80 years old or older. You can't do that with sports. Introduce them to a lifetime thing that they will enjoy their whole life. And that's all I've got to say.
Oh, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Emalee.
Would
We
you
love
mind singing something with me? Would you? You don't have
We'll
to
try
if you don't
something.
want
Let's
to.
do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's sing something together. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Now you sing the lead and I'm going to sing harmony to you.
Are you sure?
You take the last verse.
To the old rugged cross
I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. We did it! My
Well,
friends,
oh yes.
well, don't send a lot of money out here to us now. Just be sure if it does, it's got pictures of the presidents on it.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of Songs of the Ozarks, and thank you very much, my friend, for
Thank
joining
you for
us.
letting me be a part of it.
And thank you guys for watching.